Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. So this Fireside Chat is part of CAL's Uncovering and Empowering Hidden Heroes campaign that we just launched on the 1st of November. So this campaign seeks to equip all mental health caregivers with the resources and the support that they need. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit www.cal.org.sg/hidden heroes. So first, I'd like to thank the Janssen pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson for their support for this Fireside Chat. And we are very honored to have a highly esteemed psychiatrist who is not a stranger to CAL caregivers, Dr. Ang Yong Guan, a caregiver who places high emphasis on her loved one's well-being despite her own set of medical challenges. Cocoanna, Cityruth Christian, and a strong individual who overcame the stigma of having a mental health condition and continued to advocate for her fellow peers, Michelle Lai. So I'd like to encourage, if you have any questions, I'd like to encourage you to type it in the Zoom chat. The chat will be monitored to ensure that all participants are respected and safe. And we seek participants' kind understanding in sharing the conversational space with others. Let's be considerate and mindful of the needs of our fellow participants. And just a reminder also that the session is recorded. If anyone does not consent to be recorded, you can feel free to exit, and we will be putting up the recording, which will be made available at a later date. All right, so tonight's Fireside Chat, Schizophrenia 101, is breaking the myths and misconceptions. So according to a 2016 Singapore mental health study by Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 43 of those aged 18 and up in Singapore has had a psychotic disorder in their lifetime. With schizophrenia being the most common psychotic disorder, how much do we actually know about it? Is it really a split personality disorder? And what do we do if someone we know starts experiencing symptoms? In the first part of this session, Dr. Ang will explain about the illness, the onset, the symptoms, the misconceptions around it, as well as available treatments. And in the next half, Coco and Michelle will join Dr. Ang in a panel discussion to share their lived experiences. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Ang. Dr. Ang has been a practicing psychiatrist for the last 30 years. His area of interest includes psychotic illnesses, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, and stress-related disorders. He champions the mentally ill and is very passionate about public education on mental health topics. And he's a recipient of 2 National Day Awards, the Public Service Medal and the Public Administration Medal. So now we're very happy to hand over to Dr. Ang, who will be giving his presentation. Dr. Ang, over to you.
Sure. Can I share my slides now? It's right. Can you all see the slides? Okay. Are we ready to go? Okay.
Yes, ready to go.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction. Today, we will be talking about breaking the myth and misconception about schizophrenia. And I will give a short talk on schizophrenia. Last year, we had a nationwide Caregivers Day, and the topic was also on schizophrenia. It was held in September last year. And some of the slides will be from last year, but some will be brand new. Now, let's start with what is schizophrenia. The term schizophrenia. Schizo means split. Phrenia is diaphragm. So it's split of the diaphragm. What has diaphragm got to do with schizophrenia? You see, before 1911, the term was coined in 1911. Before 1911, it was known as dementia precox. Then after 1911, it's called schizophrenia, split of the diaphragm. Last time, they believed that above the diaphragm is the brain, thinking. Below the diaphragm is gut, the gut feeling. So it's a split between thinking and feeling. And that is the meaning of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, if you think carefully, schizophrenia is like living in a world of its own, and then it's almost like dementia. Dementia is also living in your own world, living in your own world, and that's why before 1911 it was known as dementia precox, and it's disconnected from the world. You're in a world of your own, and I liken it to be like in a glass cage. You can see the person can see you, but unfortunately you cannot connect with the person, okay, because you're blocked by the glass. So that is the concept of disconnection within yourself and disconnection with the outer world. And the earlier term was known as dementia precox, okay? And now, let's begin with the 3 layers of the brain. After all, schizophrenia affects the brain, right? As well as the mind. But the brain is something we can see. The brain is tangible. We all can see the brain. So there are basically only 3 layers of the brain, A, B, C, and that's it. A, B, C. What is A? A is the limbic system, comprising the 4 structures there: thalamus, hypothalamus, amygdala, and hippocampus. Hippocampus is the memory store of the brain. So what is the function of the limbic system? In essence, the limbic system picked up the 5 senses. What you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, all come to the limbic first. And from there, it goes to the prefrontal cortex. Okay, prefrontal cortex. And what are the functions of the prefrontal cortex? Basically, there are 5: planning, organizing, prioritizing, control of impulse, and thinking of consequences. And in a way, these are functions of a mature person. These are functions of somebody who's secure with high self-esteem. And we know the brain takes 25 years to develop, and it grows from the back to the front. So at the end of 25 years, you are expected to have a fully developed prefrontal cortex with all the 5 functions there. And then you have C. C is brainstem, eating well, sleeping well, and breathing well. And when we talk about self-care has a lot to do with the brainstem. We want to eat well, we want to sleep well, and we want to breathe in the form of exercise. Okay? Now, making sense of the 5 senses. If your limbic system is not connected to your prefrontal cortex, you cannot make sense of the 5 senses. Let me explain. What is the meaning of making sense of the 5 senses? First of all, the 5 senses are picked up by the limbic, which is right in the center of your brain. The limbic system is right in the center of your brain. And then it is processed by the prefrontal cortex. And then after processing, it goes to the memory store for storage, or is translated into behavior. Because your limbic is connected to your cerebral cortex or prefrontal cortex, your behavior is rational behavior, normal behavior. It's only when it's disconnected, then you have abnormal or irrational behavior. Very simple, ABC of the brain. A to B and store at M, what I call the ABM circuit. ABM circuit, okay? Now, so 5 senses picked up by the limbic, processed by the prefrontal cortex, all right? Of the 5 functions of the prefrontal cortex, the most important, in my view, is prioritizing. What is important, what is not important, what to absorb and what to discard. We are all bombarded by sensory overload. A lot of things are coming through our senses. Every morning when we wake up, when we open our mobile phone, images are coming into our brain. Whatever we read, whatever we see, whatever video clips we watch, they all come to the limbic. And the PFC must have the ability to select what is important and what is not important. And if that function fails, we have a lot of problem. And therefore, it is about focusing what is salient and what is not salient. However, when there is a disconnection between A and B, there is no ability to prioritize. There is no ability to focus. And hence, salience is diminished. Salience is altered. And that is the meaning of altered salience. And we believe that in people with schizophrenia, they are unable to prioritize, unable to focus, unable to have salience. And we will call that state aberrant state salience or altered salience. Okay, let me further explain. What is the meaning of aberrant or altered salient? Let's watch this little video clip.
What is it like to have schizophrenia? With schizophrenia, the most prominent symptoms of the disorder, the delusions, hallucinations, and disorganized thought. Some have hypothesized that the core deficit in schizophrenia involves the concept of salience. Salience is the interestingness of information, or how important we perceive that information to be.
So for normal people, we are able to decide what is interesting and what is important. But when you have a disconnection between your limbic and your cerebral cortex, or PFC, you cannot make that distinction. One example is when you go into a food court, right? You must focus on what you want to eat. There are so many stalls, and salience come in. What is interesting today and what is important, you zoom in, you focus, and that is the meaning of salience. However, in people with schizophrenia, they have no ability to see what is interesting or to see what is important.
We give salient items more attention and are more likely to act upon them. On a biological level, the neurotransmitter dopamine plays a key role in the process of salience. When information is found to be salient, your brain releases dopamine. This rush of dopamine makes you pay more attention to the information and motivates you to act upon it. Our brains use salience to filter incoming information. We take in an enormous amount of information every day. So how does this relate to schizophrenia? People with schizophrenia are believed to be in a state of aberrant salience, characterized by excessive and illogical release of dopamine. When dopamine is flowing in this way, salience is assigned to every bit of new information. People with schizophrenia will begin to develop explanations for why each piece of information suddenly feels so important, so relevant, so personally significant. If they watch the news in this state of heightened salience, they might come to believe that the president must be using their State of the Union address to communicate a special coded message meant only for them. A person in a state of aberrant salience, however, these delusions of reference help them to make sense out of a senseless mental environment. What happens when salience is given to internally generated information? In a state of aberrant salience, however, these thoughts can seem important to the point where they're given the same level of priority as a voice coming from outside your head. This is thought to be the mechanism for the auditory hallucinations that people with schizophrenia experience. Aberrant salience can also explain the profound thought disorganization that is another hallmark of schizophrenia. They may hear the same information over and over again, but show no sign of actually comprehending it. This disorganization of thoughts, speech, and behavior makes more sense when you consider that aberrant salience leaves people in a state of perpetual information overload. When the filter of salience breaks, you become constantly bombarded by new information every second of the day, with no way of making sense of it all. It would be like trying to watch dozens of TV shows all at the same time. In this state of confusion, it is no wonder that people with schizophrenia can appear so bewildered and distracted.
So the key point is that when you cannot filter, all the five senses will enter into a limbic, and because you cannot filter, you have an altered state of salience. You pick up every new information without the ability to filter. And when that happens, you have information overload. You can't prioritize, you can't focus, you can't show salience. Every new bit of information you think is important. Whereas for a normal person, when it's picked up by the limbic system, you are able to process it and prioritize it and exhibit salience. You picked up what is interesting, you picked up what is important, and you discard what is not interesting and what is not important. So therein lies one possible cause of schizophrenia, the inability to filter whatever comes to the limbic system, right? So if there is a disconnect between the emotional brain, which is the limbic system, and the PFC, which is the rational brain, this is going to give rise to a lot of issue, all right? And when there's a disconnect, your rational brain goes into a ruminative mode. It keeps on ruminating, keeps on thinking non-stop, over and over again. And this is how, in a schizophrenic patient, they have disorganized thoughts. The thinking is so disorganized. And because the thinking is disorganized, the speech is also affected. The speech is also disorganized. And their behavior is disorganized and irrational. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the model we use for schizophrenia, a disconnect between the limbic system. If all of you were to take out your right fist, show your right fist and put it near to your right ear, this represents the limbic system, okay? And the limbic system will pick up the five senses, and your right forearm represents the spinal cord and will go through the rest of the spinal cord. And then your cerebral cortex, lift up your left hand, you open your left hand, that is your cerebral cortex. So if your limbic and PFC or prefrontal cortex is well connected, you have rational, normal behavior. When it is disconnected, you end up with irrational behavior. Okay? So when there's a disconnect between the limbic and the PFC, all the five functions will not be there. And you will not be able to focus and to show salience. And that is, in a nutshell, what happened to the brain in a person with schizophrenia. So, in essence, we want to swing up. A must go to B, right? We don't want to swing down. Swing down leads to irrational behavior.
Remember, the rational brain sits on the emotional brain. When the five senses are picked up by the emotional brain, we can either react or reflect. When we react, we are said to be swinging down, and we act impulsively or irrationally. When we reflect, we are said to be swinging up, and we can therefore be in control of the situation. Prolonged disconnection leads to mental health problems. Therefore, techniques such as mindfulness, yoga, or meditation can help to connect the two parts of the brain.
So in essence, we want a connected brain. We don't want a brain that's disconnected. Now in Taiwan, they come up with the idea of 失觉失调症. They don't like the word schizophrenia because schizophrenia is 精神分裂. Schizophrenia carries a stigma. So in Taiwan, they decided a better term is 失觉失调症. 失 is thinking, 觉 is feeling. So for those who are non-Chinese, it is cognitive emotional disorder. A disorder or disconnect between the cognition, which is the thinking, and the emotion, which is the feeling. Okay, so let's hear what Professor Hu had to say.
失觉失调症在我们医学上算是一个新的名词，虽然这个病已经存在很久很久了，不过它的主要的病理呢是出现在他的思考跟知觉上的困难，也就是他功能失调了，过去叫做精神分裂症。
So when I gave the talk last year, people were very excited by this term, 视觉失调症. So is there a need for Singapore to also shift to a new term, cognitive emotional disorder, CED, something that we can think about? Huh? How common is schizophrenia? We have a population of 5.69 million, citizens about 4 million. So if it's 1% of the population is affected, we think 56,900 Singaporeans and PR and non-residents have schizophrenia. If you just take citizens and PR alone, it's 40,400. Okay? And the genetic risk of schizophrenia, the general population is 1%. Okay? 1%. For a sibling of a patient with schizophrenia is 8%. That means a non-twin. Eh? For a child with a parent with schizophrenia is 12%. If both parents have schizophrenia, the risk for the child is 40%. In identical twin, it's 47%. The good news is that it's not 100%. That means 53% or nearly half is nothing to do with genetic, it's environmental. So don't go away thinking that it is 100% genetic. There is a big environmental factor involved as well. How do we diagnose schizophrenia? Okay, we don't have diagnostic tests, so we rely heavily on history from the person and from family members. And what do we look for? We look for a history of irrational behavior. Okay, this is DSM-5 text revision. TR stands for text revision, and it just came out in March 2022. It is a revision of DSM-5. DSM-5 came out in 2013. What is DSM? Statistical Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM, of mental disorders, used by the American Psychiatric Association. So American psychiatrists use DSM-5, TR, and we are going to use it to help us diagnose schizophrenia. And basically, there are 5 criteria. Okay, 1, 2, 3, delusions, hallucination, and loss of organized speech, loss of clear thinking. So DHL, you know, when you think of the Corel DHL, D is delusion, hallucination, and loss of organized speech. What is delusion? Delusion is a false, unshakable belief, not in keeping with the person's background, social, cultural, or educational background. That's the delusion. For example, if I say I'm Muhammad Ali, then you keep telling me, Dr. Ang, you are not Muhammad Ali, you are Ang Yong Guan. Then I can say, no, I'm Muhammad Ali. Then I'm deluded because I have a false belief. unshakable. You keep telling me no, I keep telling you yes. And not in keeping with my background. I'm not, I'm a Chinese. I'm not Muhammad Ali. So that's the meaning of a delusion. Hallucination is a perceptual disturbance. You see things, you hear things which are not there, right? That is hallucination. Please don't get the two mixed up, huh? Delusions and hallucination. And loss of organized speech. Out of these three positive symptoms, you need to have two out of three. And then it must be longer than 6 months. What is number 4? Number 4 is disorganized behavior. Because your thinking and your feeling is disconnected, your behavior is also affected. Catatonic behavior means you go into a state of rigidity. Catatonia, you become very rigid, and you cannot be flexible in your movement, and you can lie in bed for hours in a certain posture. That is catatonia. And number 5 is negative symptoms. Diminished emotional expression. They cannot express properly. Okay, so they are blunted in their emotional expression. Avolition means no drive, no motivation, just want to lie in bed, do nothing, or stare at the ceiling. They just totally not doing anything. That's the meaning of negative symptoms. So 1 out of 3 positive symptom, and anyone from 4 and 5, you lasting more than 6 months, that will constitute a diagnosis of schizophrenia. So these are the 3 positive features of schizophrenia. Positive in the sense that it is present in the patient, but not present in normal people. So the word positive means it's present, DHL, present in the patient. And due to a disconnect between the limbic and the PFC. Now, Professor Ellen Sack is my poster girl for schizophrenia. She developed schizophrenia from a very young age of 20. And when she was an Oxford scholar, Rhodes Scholar in Oxford University, she was totally psychotic. One day she was putting a blanket on her self and then flying in the campus. She thought that by putting a blanket on herself, she could fly in the campus. And she was totally not well. Now she's very well. She's law professor at the University of Southern California and doing very well. Let's hear from her what are the positive symptoms.
Ellen Sachs. I'm a professor at the University of Southern California School of Law, and I'm also someone who suffers from chronic schizophrenia and has had to manage life in the face of quite a few symptoms. Schizophrenia is a brain disorder, and its hallmark is
Dr. Ang, it's a bit soft. Could you maybe make the volume louder?
An analogy, schizophrenic episode is like a waking nightmare. So with all the bizarre images, impossible things happening, and utter terror. Only with a nightmare, you can sit up in bed, open your eyes, and make it go away. No such luck with schizophrenia. So I've had the delusion that I've killed hundreds of thousands of people with my thoughts, and I've had a hallucination of a man standing with a raised knife. It also involves disorganized and incoherent thinking. One of the things about managing a psychiatric illness is to learn your triggers and either avoid them or cope with them. And for me, change is difficult. I need my routine. Excessive stimulation. People with psychotic illnesses become easily overstimulated. I sort of had mild episodes a couple of times in college where I I remember one day in the middle of the winter, I put a blanket over my arms and started running around campus saying I was flying, things like that. But I officially broke down when I went to Oxford as a Marshall Scholar, my first semester there. And it started out looking a little bit like depression with mild paranoid features, but over time turned into more of a psychotic disorder of schizophrenia.
Right. So schizophrenia, positive symptom, DHL, delusion, hallucination, and loss of speech or logical thoughts. Now let's hear delusion of Mary. Okay, Mary was my patient. This is a fictitious name, and her delusion is that my closest relatives are not my relatives. It's a false belief. They are her relatives. It's an unshakable belief. You kept telling her, no, these are your relatives. She would say, no, 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 they are not my relatives. And we managed to get her well. And this is how she presented many years ago.
My brother is not, it's not my real relative. It seems like there's another person, there are another person. Not angry, but I try to keep distance from them.
Were you thinking they were trying to harm you?
No.
Oh, so you just distance yourself from them?
Yeah. Parents and my siblings.
So you avoided them?
Just keep thinking that they're not my real relatives.
And I think you were so worried that you kept all your important documents and clothing in one bag, right?
Yeah.
And you were holding onto the bag wherever you went, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I was told that your bag became bigger and bigger, right? Because you're holding a lot of things, right?
Yeah. I just afraid that other people will see my documents.
And you also locked yourself in the room, huh?
Yeah.
Why? Eh?
I don't like to communicate with others.
Yeah, and you were lying on the floor, hugging the bed. You were also avoiding your in-law and your husband, right?
Yeah.
How is your relationship with your in-law?
Good.
Relationship with your husband?
Good also.
Oh, and then you don't carry the bag around anymore?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you're working?
Yes. Better than can reason out better.
Think better, reason out better.
Yes.
The good news is that if treated early, schizophrenia can be treated. And she is very well now. She's helping her husband in a husband shop. Okay. So early treatment, early detection, early treatment is the key here. Now, the thing about schizophrenia, other than delusion and hallucination, is they have loss of logical thinking, disorganized speech. And this is a cloth embroidered by a person with schizophrenia. You see all the letters all jumbled up. Okay. Louis Wayne, when well, could draw cats very well. Unfortunately, when he was unwell and disconnected, the cats turned bizarre. Okay.
That there are many possible tragedies that could have triggered his schizophrenia. During his time in the mental institution, Wayne's drawings of cats became more and more abstract, often reaching a point where their features were nearly impossible to identify. While the change in his works are often shown as a classic example of the mental degradation of psychosis, Wayne provides an interesting case study on the impact of illness on art. He always drew cats, but the style of his artwork changed vastly, potentially reflecting the effect of illness on his mind.
Okay. Now we go on to negative features of schizophrenia. And then these are people who are totally socially withdrawn. They live in their own glass cage. It's very hard to connect with them. So what are the features of negative schizophrenia? Avolition, loss of motivation. Anhedonia, loss of interest, no more joy in what they are doing. The affect is a term for emotional expression, is blunted. They are asocial, not antisocial, asocial, socially withdrawn. Antisocial is commit crimes against society, against others. But this is asocial, totally withdrawn from society. Attention deficit, they can't concentrate, they can't pay attention. They are just lying there doing nothing. Sometimes they can be motionless for the whole day. Alogia means poverty of speech. Because of the disconnection, they don't process what you're telling them. And if they don't process what you are telling them, they can't produce speech. They can't answer you relevantly. Now, the third area is cognitive deficits of schizophrenia. So you have positive symptoms, you have negative symptoms, and then you have cognitive deficits. And again, because of the disconnect, they are not able to make sense of the five senses. They have altered or aberrant salience, a lot of sensory input coming into the limbic, but not picked up, not processed by the PFC. And then what happened? They can't make sense of the surrounding. The thinking is poor because the cerebral cortex, the PFC, is not connected to the limbic system. And they can't concentrate. Whatever is picked up at the limbic, not processed by the PFC, you cannot store in your memory store. You cannot concentrate. And if you can't concentrate, of course, your memory is poor. Okay? So there are other features associated with schizophrenia. Again, due to the disconnection. When your limbic is not connected to your PFC, you are prone to anxiety. You are prone to panic attack. You have fear, simple fear of darkness, for example. All right, and then you have OCD behavior. Many of my patients, before they have full-blown schizophrenia, they first presented with anxiety, panic, OCD behavior. They keep washing their hands, they keep checking, they keep making sure the doors and windows are locked. But it is their insecurity. I think it's like they know something is missing. They are not connecting their limbic and the PFC. And they are showing early signs. Some get into a state of depression. So this connection explains a lot of things. Aside from schizophrenia, they can have other features as well. And personality change in schizophrenia. Imagine you have chronic schizophrenia. You are bound to feel insecure with low self-esteem because you don't feel useful. That's why Professor Alan Sack, the law professor you just saw, besides taking medication, went for psychotherapy, went for counseling to build her sense of esteem and security. These are the stages of schizophrenia. First of all, is the pre-morbid, no symptom, and then prodrome. Ladies and gentlemen, the term prodrome means you haven't had the full-blown clinical features, DHL, of schizophrenia yet, right? But you may have early sign like feeling a bit anxious, feeling a bit panicky, having a bit of OCD behavior, can't concentrate, your studies, your results drop, but no DHL, no delusion, no hallucination, no loss of touch with reality. But you know something is missing. We did research a long time ago. We discovered that their result dropped. Sec 4 suddenly they can't do much. Sec 3, you can see the change in their study pattern. They can't study well. So parents who are out there, don't wait for stage 3 acute stage to happen. When it's early, make sure you picked it up early. The prodrome state, you must pick it up early so that you can treat them early. Then acute progression, and then chronic. Chronic, you can have positive symptom, negative symptom, cognitive symptom, and functional disability. Okay, so we try to arrest the deterioration as much as possible. So factors causing relapse: no insight, poor compliance, inappropriate medication or inadequate medication, poor family support. And then when you have many relapses, your brain also becomes atrophic. Atrophic means shrinking. You see the ventricle here is still good shape. Now the ventricle is widened, right? So every relapse definitely will cause some damage to the brain. Now, violence and schizophrenia. On 28 September, one American flew from California to Singapore on board SQ-33. And suddenly he became deluded. He said, there is bomb in this flight. They are all in some of the luggages. Let's check the luggages. Wow, the steward, the cabin crew all panic, Then he demanded, can you open this compartment? Can you check the bag? They all panic. So they tried to restrain him. tie him down, and then when he felt slightly better, he asked them to release him. So the moment he was free from the restraint, he slapped one of the cabin crew. Okay, and then what happened? He was actually having schizophrenia, but he was undiagnosed, and he was actually hearing voices for 1 year, 1.5 years. All right, and he believed he could hear the thoughts of people around him, and then he thought delusion. He thought he was a holy deity, and he wanted to go to Phuket, transit via Singapore, and it caused problem aboard SQ-33. They had to send 2 fighter jets to actually escort SQ-33 back to Changi Airport. Right? Mother, age 35, stabbed the 8-year-old daughter 64 times, and voices were telling her to kill the daughter. Her 4-year-old daughter was hiding behind the door, looking at the whole thing. But the family knew from 2018 onward, she was acting very strangely, complaining of people stalking her, poisoning her, but not brought to see any doctor, and continued to hear voices in March last year. And then the voices told her, your eldest daughter has evil spirit in her, and you must get rid of her. So it's very, very sad. What is the point here? The point here is that if you are treated, managed properly, you are not violent. You are not a threat to society. It's the undiagnosed cases that worry a lot of us. So the earlier we treat them, the better. Now, long ago, this is 27 years ago, I was chairman of the Action Group for Mental Illness, and we were championing for more beds instead of cells, sending mentally ill criminals to hospital and not to prison. And Justice Yong Pang Hao at that time actually had to sentence Madam Lim to prison because he said we don't have a hospital order in Singapore. And in the absence of a hospital order, we had no choice but send you to prison. What wrong did Madam Lim did at the time? He was suffering from psychotic depression. He killed his 3 kids, and she herself jumped, right? But she didn't die. And in Singapore at the time, if you attempt suicide, it's an offense. So she was actually given a 9-year prison. And unfortunately, there was no hospital order. She was detained in the hospital for treatment. No, in the prison for treatment. And when she was released in early 1995, she succeeded in killing herself in September 1995. So this case made me think, if only she had been sent to a hospital with proper treatment, counseling included, maybe she would be able to come to terms with the wrong she had done and with the grief of having 3 kids gone, versus going to a prison. Now they kept telling me, Dr. Ang, don't worry, in the prison, we will look after her. We would send psychiatrists to see her. But I tell you, there's a difference. Being called a patient, admitted to a hospital for treatment, versus being called a prisoner, admitted to prison, receiving psychiatric treatment, okay? Now, we remove the notion that mentally ill patients are dangerous people. In a way, we hope to destigmatize them. And therefore, we urge mentally ill offenders to go to hospital, secure hospital, of course, receiving proper treatment. In UK, there is hospital order. In UK, mental patients who have committed offenses, they're sent to hospital first. Okay. Now, not all are linked to schizophrenia. One of them, under the influence of LSD, killed his mother and then killed his grandmother. Okay. Another one, 19-year-old, charged with the murder of his father at Yishun, block 653. And then just a few days ago, a 31-year-old woman arrested for suspected murder of her father. Now they are under remand at IMH. they will be examined by psychiatrists to make sure they are well or not well. Okay, treating schizophrenia basically is to connect A and B. Medication or any methods that can connect A and B, right? We want them not just response to medicine, we want them to have functional recovery, full recovery, and to have a quality of life, okay? So medications, we use antipsychotic, okay? We also use antidepressant for those who are depressed, mood stabilizer for those with mood swing, and for those with schizoaffective psychosis. A bit of schizophrenia, a bit of bipolar. You combine the two, it's called schizoaffective psychosis. We use anti-anxiety drug for people with schizophrenia who are anxious. We also use hypnotics to help them sleep. Now, this is my clinic consultation room. First M, I have medicine background, antipsychotic first row, antidepressant second row, mood stabilizer third row, anti-anxiety fourth row, and hypnotics fifth row. And you notice over on the right, I have big poster of the brain telling them about the limbic and the prefrontal cortex and how it affects behavior. Okay, these are the 5 categories of medicine behind my back. Okay, older antipsychotic, right? And then you have newer antipsychotic. I want to say something about cariprazine. Cariprazine is a D3 receptor blocker. Most of the newer antipsychotic only block D2, dopamine D2. So cariprazine block D3. And because cariprazine block D3, it is said to be good for negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Make you a bit more motivated, a bit more upbeat. So I've been noticing patients of mine on cariprazine coming out of that negative state. And of course, you have clozapine. Clozapine is a gold standard, right? Professor Ellen Sack is on 600 milligrams of clozapine every day until now. And she called herself a lifer. I want to be on clozapine for the rest of my life because this is a lifelong condition. And clozapine, the only catch about clozapine is that you need to do the white blood cell because clozapine affects the white blood cell. The white blood cell count may drop to below 4,000 and is fatal. And that's why we have to monitor the white blood cell when the person is on clozapine. Okay, this is a meta-analysis. That means a combined analysis of a lot of papers amounting to 43,000 patients in 212 trials. And what did they discover? They discover clozapine is right at the top, 0.88, 0.88. Solian, olanzapine, Risperdal, paliperidone, Invega, and then haloperidol, quetiapine, aripiprazole, which is Abilify, right? And then you have chlorpromazine, is a very old medicine. I'm surprised it's listed as number 12. Cephris, Latuda, these are common medicine we use to treat the schizophrenia.
I had lost touch of what was imagined and what was real. And when I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, I was told I was permanently and totally disabled. But that was not the end. I spent 12 months trying 5 different medications, and yes, it did really feel hopeless. But finally, I began seeing a new doctor. His name was Henry Nasrallah. Dr. Nasrallah was the first doctor I met who was willing to fight for my life. Dr. Nasrallah prescribed an infrequently used medication called clozapine. After 3 months on clozapine, my hallucinations had virtually disappeared. And after 1 year, my parents, Dr. Nasrallah, and I were talking about my transfer to the University of Cincinnati. And in 2011, I graduated from UC with my molecular biology bachelor's degree. It really felt like a miracle, and it gave me renewed confidence. In 2014, I published my memoir, Mind is Strange, My Journey from Schizophrenia and Homelessness to Recovery. Cityruth provides education about cutting-edge and underutilized medications such as miclozapine, which has kept me in full remission for 11 years with no relapse.
Now you know why clozapine is a gold standard. If possible, we would like to use it, especially for positive symptoms, auditory hallucinations and delusions. So now even you have once a month injection, and you have once every 3-month injection. And lately, but not approved in Singapore yet, approved in America, you can have an injection every 6 months. And twice a year, that's it, okay? Now, besides first M, you have second M. What is second M? Other methods, self-care, counseling, peer support, rehabilitation, family support, and social support. And this is where CAL comes in to help caregivers engage their family members in all these other methods. Okay, the 6 main components of recovery. I need minimum medication. I need talking therapies, which is counseling. I need to have a useful job. I need family and friend support. I need rest and relaxation. I am tougher, T-U-F-R. And this is, to be tougher, you need to connect A and B. Okay, so good insight, right, and adequate medicine, good self-care, second M and first M, okay? This one, no first M and no second M, disconnected, no insight, no, you refuse to take medicine, frequent relapses, poor self-care, not functioning well. So at the end of it all, we want our patient to be physically healthy, mentally sound, spiritually okay, and able to socialize by practicing the first M and the second M, and to connect the A and the B, okay? Now, we want holistic approach, living mindfully. And I have a very simple way of doing mindfulness, my 5-finger mindfulness. If you're interested, drop me a mail, angyongguan@gmail.com. I will send you the soft copy. Okay, this is just a little bit of
what does it mean to live mindfully? To live mindfully, one has to pay attention to the present in a non-judgmental way, so that new ways, new possibilities open up, and then you can have more options, and you can then cope with the stress much better. And the acronym is FOCUS. F is for paying attention to the positive, present, and planning for the future. O is opening up your 5-finger, which denotes opening your mind. C is for calming down through deep and slow breathing. U is being unjudgmental or non-judgmental. And S is about support from various sources. That in essence is 5-finger mindfulness.
Yeah. And step 5, I want to talk about connect, internal connection between the limbic and the PFC, external connection with other people, and also connect to our hobbies and our beliefs.
Step 5 of the 5-finger mindfulness is to be mindful of the support you can get from people, hobbies, and beliefs. People such as family members, friends, colleagues, and classmates. Hobbies such as yoga, meditation, exercise, sports. And lastly, beliefs in the form of religious, personal, and spiritual beliefs.
Okay, so I told you just now, right? She is taking 600 milligrams of clozapine. She wrote a book, The Center Cannot Hold. If you have a chance, grab hold of the book and read. And actually, one doctor say your prognosis is very poor. She proved the doctor wrong. She's now professor of law, University of Southern California. And this psychologist, again, from being schizophrenic, for having schizophrenia for 10 years, she's now a clinical psychologist.
I guess some of you knew my story. As a teenager, I got diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I spent 10 years in and out, most in actually, of psychiatric hospitals. I used a lot of medication at times, and I was really sick. I was hearing aggressive and controlling voices and was not able to do the most common tasks like reading or changing my bed or anything, because I could not just remember how to do it anymore. And I also had so many disturbing voices in my head. However, I was lucky. I am very stubborn, and even if I lost hope sometimes during the way, I always found it again. I got practical support, so I was able to find my place in life again, getting an apartment, getting an education, getting a job, and I got treatment, so I can understand my problems and find new solutions to them. Today, I am a clinical psychologist with a PhD. I work part-time as a researcher and part-time as the vice president for the Norwegian Psychology Association. I live a full and rich life, and I'm very happy.
Wow, this is fantastic. Rich and full life, and I'm very happy. Unimaginable, from schizophrenia to clinical psychology. 3 factors of recovery.
So let's look at these 3 important factors that got me from where I was that time to where I am today. First, hope. I am, as I told you, very stubborn, and I also had support of my family. That was very important to me, so I could find hope again whenever I lost it. The next factor is practical support. Earlier, most treatment of people with mental health problems took place in big hospitals, where patients stayed for years, some for the rest of their life. Today, we know that people with mental health problems need support in their everyday life, out in society, where we all live together. And the third factor I want to mention is treatment. For some, medication is important. For others, medication has little effect besides being calming. Not all forms of therapy are useful for all patients, obviously, but for some it can be very effective if you find the right form of therapy. And different types of schooling that could be useful to many people with mental health problems. And we know a lot of things that can help people to get better lives. And it's very sad that this opportunity is still not available for all patients that might have useful. So things are getting better. But we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, this is a very good book on schizophrenia. I urge you to get hold of this. It's a revised treatment or family manual for people with schizophrenia and family members with schizophrenia. Okay, now last few slides are tips for caregivers. If you have a family member with schizophrenia, what can you do? First of all, you look after yourself first, self-care, before you care for the family member with schizophrenia. Self-care is not selfishness. Don't ever think that because you care about yourself, you're selfish. No, you have to take care of yourself. 3 things: sleep well, eat well, and breathe, exercise well, okay? So you have a family member who is unwell. Appreciate that this is something that can be managed with medication and with other methods. And accept whatever you cannot change, you accept. And finally, you adapt to the family member. Appreciate, accept, adapt. Appreciate, accept, adapt. If you continue to work on these 3 points, you will then be able to engage your family member with schizophrenia well. Okay? So moving ahead with schizophrenia, personalized treatment. We're all looking forward to personalized, customized treatment based on the genetic profile of the patient. And then we are looking forward to destigmatization. I told you about CED, cognitive emotional disorder, rather than schizophrenia. And then acceptance by the public and employer, insurance coverage, equal parity with physical illnesses. There is no such thing as discrimination against mental illness. We hope one day it will happen. Equal coverage for both. And then living with the illness, okay? This is another good book. Let's don't talk about mental disorder. Let's talk about brain disorder. Okay, I leave it to you to get hold of this book and take a good look. If you can't get the book, Dr. Daniel Amen is available on YouTube. So conclusion, basically, there are myths and misconceptions about schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a brain disorder. And basically, it's a disconnection between the limbic and the PFC, the prefrontal cortex. And because of the disconnection, they cannot handle inputs through the five senses well. They tend to have information overload, and they tend to give salience to every new information. Whereas a normal person is able to see, filter the information, and not absorb everything until overloaded and confused. Okay, so that in essence is schizophrenia. I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang. That was a very comprehensive presentation, and we really appreciate you taking the time to take us through it in detail. I can see a whole bunch of questions coming in, but in the meantime, before we get to the questions, what I want to do is welcome our fellow panelists who have joined us for this evening. Maybe perhaps first, let me introduce Cocoanna. Cocoanna, would you like to take some time to introduce yourself to the panel?
Hi everyone, my name is Coco. I am 44 years old and I'm taking care of my husband who has schizophrenia. I met him when I was 16 and we are first love. So I find him very interesting. And since then we've been together for coming 27 years.
Thank you for your sharing, Coco. It's very, we definitely have some questions around what it's like to care for someone with schizophrenia. And before we get to that, I would like to invite our next panelist, Michelle. Michelle is a person in recovery, and she'll be able to help us address questions from the perspective of a patient. Michelle, before we begin, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Hello, I'm Michelle Lai, and I have schizoaffective disorder, where schizo means that I hear voices when I'm unwell, and affective means that I have depression. So when taken together, it means that when my mood is low, I potentially hear voices. So I've been symptom-free for about 7 years. And it's my privilege to be able to share with you today, because I usually share closed doors with as a volunteer to schools or with volunteers of hospitals, but today's Fireside chat is open to the public, so I'm looking forward to all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Michelle. Really appreciate your honesty and willingness to share. If I may please get the ball rolling, I'll probably start my first question with Dr. Ang. Dr. Ang, as you know, we have quite a lot of caregivers in our joining us this evening for today's talk. And one of the questions that I saw in our group, in our chat, is actually related to what happens when we notice our loved ones showing symptoms of what we think could potentially be schizophrenia. So one of the questions that we'd like to know is, if we have a loved one that we feel is showing signs or symptoms of indicating that that person could potentially be suffering from schizophrenia, how could we go about trying to essentially convince our loved one to start receiving help or getting the help they need? And also, usually the other concern that we have as caregivers or family members is a concern about stigmatization. So what would your advice be for caregivers who are about to approach this conversation with their loved one who has not started on the process of recovery or treatment, for that matter?
Okay, very good question. First of all, regarding stigma, we are moving forward to talk about it's a brain disease, okay? So something that is related to chemical imbalance, the dopamine level. So because of the dopamine level is imbalanced, the connection between the limbic and the PFC is affected. And that's the first point. So tell our loved one this is a brain problem, right? And you don't have to worry, and it can be treated, because now we have medication, and then we also have other methods. And then we can also show them, that's why I say Professor Ellen Sack is my poster girl. You can show them videos about Professor Ellen Sack. And it's not easy. You got to gently engage them. You got to, you cannot do it in one session. You got to spread over a few sessions. So, and then appreciate, accept, adapt. Back to the 3A. Appreciate, right? This is an illness, and accept whatever you cannot change, and then you adapt to whatever you think you can change to help your loved one.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang. It's one of the key takeaways is ultimately approaching our loved one with kindness. And thank you for thank you for sharing how we
Can I add? Sorry,
Yep.
can I add?
Of course, Michelle.
As a person in recovery and as a person who worked in the mental health sector, so my first job was either A&E at IMH. So I know through experience that my own diagnosis, right? When I seek help, right, the diagnosis is actually not made public. So a lot of people fear that when they seek help, right, their diagnosis is made public to the employers, or like when they see other doctors. For example, if they see the doctor at IMH, the information is made public to the doctors in the polyclinic. But actually, this is not the case. The doctors at IMH will ask you like, do you want to make the information public, or they will ask like, do you want me to write a memo to your other family physicians lah? So it's your choice to declare also. And also, if you want to seek help, right, you can go to the A&E, and usually they're afraid of like being hospitalized. But what I see is that they are given treatment and then sent back home to follow up in another time. So like so it's actually not so scary. And another way you can help is to accompany your loved ones to see the doctor or the counselor. One way can be to not ask them to see the psychiatrist as a first line defense, but to see the counselor or the psychologist first to talk about their problems. And I believe that as professionals, they'll be able to talk to your loved ones about the options available. Yeah, thank you.
Michelle is very right. In the good old days, without newer antipsychotics, many of the patients are hospitalized. And all over the world, you have big mental hospital to keep all these patients. But because of good medicine, the newer antipsychotic, mental hospital all over the world are getting smaller and smaller, because there's no need to keep them. We want to integrate them into society. And secondly, a lot of general hospitals now have psychiatric wards and psychiatric department. In the good old days, there was only Woodbridge Hospital, which is now called Institute of Mental Health, and no other psychiatric department anywhere. Now where you go to SGH, there's a psychiatric department. You go to Tan Tock Seng, there's a psychiatric department. You go to Sengkang, there's a psychiatric department. So it's all over the island. Help is readily available, and we shouldn't be afraid of being institutionalized. In the past, yes, because of limited medication, and they tend to institutionalize you. But all over the world, everybody is talking about smaller mental hospital, larger community services like CAL doing a great job. You have Singapore Association of Mental Health also doing a great job. And Singapore Anglican Community Services, they have Hougang Center, they have Simei Center, Bukit Batok also they have centers. So this is the concept we're having, not institutionalizing them, but spreading them out into society.
Yeah, I also like to add that it's like what Dr. Ang said is very true. There's a movement in the recent years to move the patients to community care. So even if you go to the A&E, if they can, if your family members can cope with you being at home, right, they'll send you home with medication, and then they'll see you again 2 weeks later. Yeah, so there's no you don't have to be afraid. And also there is also this fear of seeing the doctor, and it's very costly, right? Actually there are a lot of psychiatric services in government hospitals now, like what Dr. Ang said, SGH, and actually you can go to the polyclinic and get a memo referral to see a subsidized rate at hospitals. Yeah.
Okay.
100% correct, Michelle. Thank you so much. And I really hope that all of you find that so helpful to be able to hear from the perspective of Michelle, and so encouraging, and watching Michelle be such an inspiration to the rest of us on her recovery journey. So thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your honesty and candidly speaking with us. Coco, if I may invite you now from the perspective of a caregiver. I know a lot of us here are caregivers, and I guess the main question that we have for you is, people generally shy away from getting into a relationship with someone with a mental health condition, especially if the condition is already apparent or made known earlier. Why did you still proceed with your husband despite that fact that he is in the process of dealing with his condition? Were you worried that the condition would pass on to your next generation, or what were some of the concerns that you had as a partner?
In fact, when I know him at 16 years old, I already know he has schizophrenia. He's 8 years my senior. He got it during his army time. He was a top scholar. His result was very good. Government gave him an army scholarship. And he's very talented in music. Any instrument, he can, you let him listen to a piece of music, he can play it out for you. So I always joke with him. I say, you are like Rain Man, beautiful mind. Your mind is so beautiful to me. I find him very interesting. But because of his condition, that time he had to be on his family are not really that open to let people know about his condition. And in fact, what they planned for him in those olden days is that they want to admit him forever into IMH, the day center, and let him stay there forever, to be institutionalized. And I do not agree. So what happened is that I took him away. I told the parents, I will take care of him, don't worry, because they were giving so much medication. He's like, every day he's lying on the bed, and then he can't do anything. And when the parents also don't talk to him, they will say, hi, come back already, huh? Okay, go and sleep. They will not talk to him. And for me, I'm trained in early childhood. So to me, it's that there's no stimulation, there's nothing helping him, to do like simple routine jobs, simple life skill. So that's when I step in and I talk to his doctor. I say, can we lower the medication? So let him be able to function. We just start with a lower dose and we see where he is at. Because medication, you have to be prepared that over the years it can change. Depend on his situation. Depend, there are new medication that come in. Like during that time, it's like every 5 years they might change there's a new medication coming in. Currently, my husband is on injection every 2 weeks because he's considered quite a serious case. He's on constant injection. The community nurse, I engage them to come over every 2 weeks. So he has someone to talk to, and then at the same time make sure that he gets his injection. Usually for the IMH community nurse, they only will come if you are not compliant with your injection and medication. But for my case, because I am in wheelchair bound, I can't always go with him. So I say, till they are very kind, they help me, and then they get their community nurse to come in. So based on that, and every day I'll make sure he takes his medication throughout the days. Because when he's not on his medication, like in the younger days, at time when we don't really understand our mental health, and then during that time, we are mostly from different religion group. So his family will bring him to the temple, when John's water, ask him to drink the water. And for me, I'm from a Christian family. I bring him go for deliverance, seminar and all that, cast the demon out of him. It was really bad because at that time we did not understand. We thought it's a spiritual thing, but it's a mental thing. It's a brain illness. It's not something that they wanted, but since they have it, then we must find ways how to deal with it, how to help them to go through and live a normal life. So I'm someone who is against putting all the patients into the hospital and then let's stay there for the rest of their life. It's not good for them. And I wanted to live a more fulfilled life. That's why I kept my husband away. Only when he needs to adjust his medication, when he have a slight relapse or because of stress, okay, I might let him go in, adjust the medication for a few days and he's out again. Yeah. And so far he's doing quite well.
Thank you so much, Coco.
Because when he's off,
yeah.
That you will get in trouble with the Jurong police station, familiar with me already. When he get into trouble, I will be invited to be the builder, go to court, I have to go and bill him out every month and things like that, because people outside, they are not aware, especially in Singapore. I feel that our police need to be more trained dealing with mental patients, because they are not like purposely want to find for or look funny, or because it's their illness, they are showing symptoms. They're not trying to be funny, but when you come in a authoritative way and you scream and shout at them, hey, stop, don't move, also run. The moment the police call my husband start running already. So it's like there needs to be some training for the police in this area. And even like in overseas, those who are chronic schizophrenia patients, they have a card, a mental health card, to identify them when they meet with authority, so they won't get into trouble. It's because of a confidentiality clause in Singapore. Many times I ask IH doctor, can you write me a letter, a memo, so I can keep with my husband? And in the past they don't, but recently this few years the doctor are nicer. So the new doctor, they'll give me a small memo and say he got schizophrenia. So with that, when he go out and his people start looking at him funnily, he will show them, I got this illness. Then they say, okay, they check, the police check, okay, you're clear to go. At least I won't be going to the police station, it's really messed up my work also, because I have to be taking work and then taking leave off, and then I can't tell my boss, say my husband is mental, because at that time it's very taboo. Because no bosses will say, oh, I will hire you when you have a mental patient. So we caregiver also have a lot of stress dealing with all this. We have to hide. But now I say I have enough of hiding. It's time that the community have to learn to be inclusive of the caregiver as well as the patient. And like in my community here, I didn't move out. I've been here for 18 years. All the neighbors downstairs, the coffee shop auntie, uncle know about my husband. So I go down to buy things. I forgot to bring my wallet. They say, yeah, I know you, like you later come back and pay. It's okay. If not, I have to why and pay, okay?
Thank you, Coco. Thank you very much for the in-depth sharing. And it's really encouraging to hear, that a caregiver is you're advocating for our community as well as your loved one. And to Dr. Ang's point earlier, we are at this point where we really want to be able to encourage people to understand that a mental illness is just as important as taking care of our physical health. And having more individuals in the society to be able to understand that. And to your point earlier about how sometimes, our authorities out there, when our loved one is having a relapse in a public place, usually, thankfully for me as well, my family, we're able to come across police who are helpful, and they are, they understand that our loved ones require special needs and not so much about getting arrested in a public place. Thank you very much, Coco. If I may bring the attention back to Michelle. Michelle, for someone who is in recovery, for yourself, would it be correct to say that you have reached a point where you are more symptom-free at this stage? And does that mean that you are no longer taking medication? And in your position, in your perspective as a patient, what do you feel it means to be symptom-free?
Thanks for your question. So for me, I've been symptom-free for about 7 years. So for symptom-free for me, the most important thing is I can function in the different areas of my life, like what Dr. Ang says, like my family life, my spiritual life, my physical life, my emotional life. Like I don't have mood swings, my mood is stable. I can cope with emotional stimuli, and also social life, and most importantly mental health. I don't hear voices anymore, and even when my mood is low, I don't hear voices anymore. So for me, right, actually I attribute my wellness to changing my medication from an oral daily medication to a monthly injection. So for me, I had my last relapse 7 years ago when I went overseas and forgot to take my daily oral medication. That's why when I came back, I had a relapse because it was like about 1 week. So like I went to the doctor and like I said like I had enough of being sick, because I saw that I had a medical condition, and I told myself that with a medical condition, it means that there is a medical cure. So I went to a doctor and I said, can I work with you to titrate the medication to change from oral medication to a monthly injection. Because I know myself, I will forget to take my medication. Yeah, so we worked together, and it was a long process. I have to tell her, I have to meet her once every few weeks to tell her my symptoms, my side effects, and also like if I'm still hearing voices. So she'll titrate the medication. So working together with your doctor is very important. Yeah, and also I feel that I've largely recovered because I can function in my life, and also I feel yeah I will attribute it to medicine compliancy because I've taken the medication for so long that the therapeutic effects are evident in my body lah. Yeah, because the longer I take the injection, I realize that my mood is more stable, and also cognitively I can concentrate better, and my memory start coming back. Yeah, so I think even if you take the correct medication, you have to be on it for a certain period of time in order to see the effects. So you have to continue taking it. And I feel that a lot of people don't want to take the medication anymore when they feel that they are better. But I feel that you have to acknowledge the part that the medication does in keeping you well. So if you are, like, for example, if you are walking a straight path, right, and you're doing well, it means that you have to continue with it. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to stop and change your path, because like the medicine, the path is correct. The medicine is keeping you well. A lot of people don't want to take the medication because of two things: side effects, and also they have the perception that the medication is altering their biochemistry and their personality. But for me, I feel that the side effects, it is unfortunately with the modern technology, the side effects are there. But I think you have to weigh your pros and cons. You have to ask yourself important questions. So like I feel that when people go to the doctor or when they speak to their loved ones, right, the type of questions they ask is very important, because with the correct type of questions, you change your perspective, and with a changed perspective and the right questions, it can actually change a life. So like I'll ask myself, what kind of life do I want? What does my best self look like? What do I want to work on? Can I live with the side effects, for example, higher blood sugar in my blood, and but I have a healthy mind in order to function and work? So what do I do to manage the side effects? I go swimming, even though I gain weight, but then I try to cut down on sugar. So do I want to, okay, a lot of people don't want to take medicine because of the weight gain. For myself, I gained like 60 kg on medication. I feel very sad, like my looks are gone. But I tell myself that I have a healthy mind, and I am in the healthy space, cognitive space for myself to go and exercise. I have the motivation to exercise and bring my blood sugar down. And I can work on my health. I see it as a project. I see myself as not going back. My aim is not to go back to the past me where before I have illness, but to reinvent myself so that I can be a better me in the future. Yeah, and another thing is they feel that they don't want to take medication because they feel that the medication is altering their biochemistry and their personality. But I feel that even though there are some effects like blunted emotions, I have it too. Sometimes I work poverty. In a lot of people, I can't express myself. And but these are things that I feel that how do I put it? Like, if I take the medication, I have to cope with these things, and I have to learn to cope. But if I don't take the medication, I don't even have the functionality and the healthy mental space to live a life that is meaningful. Yeah,
Thank you so much,
I
Michelle.
weigh my pros and cons, and I decided, like Eileen said, I decided to take the medication for my whole life. It is a tool that I see that can improve my life.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. You are really an inspiration to all of us, and you've been so candid and so honest with your journey. I'm sure I'm not the only one here expressing my appreciation for you being able to give us your perspective from from a patient's point of view. I do have a follow-up question with regards to what Michelle said for Dr. Ang, but before I move on to that, I just want to let everyone know, I do realize that we were meant to wrap up at about 8:30 p.m. So for those of you who have very generously joined us for this entire program, thank you very much for being with us. If you need to jump off, we completely understand. But if Dr. Ang and Coco and Michelle don't mind, perhaps we can handle a few more questions. And of course, everybody is welcome to stay. So moving on, Dr. Ang, just going back to what Michelle said earlier, could you give us some insight from your perspective as a healthcare provider and, you know, give insight to us as caregivers? Michelle brought out a very good point about how the journey of being on medication needs to be an ongoing process, your relationship as a patient to a doctor. So perhaps you can give us some insight on some of the patients that you've journeyed with. Because Michelle talked about how she was open to adjusting her dosage and how her body responds to it when she is on the medication over time. What does that look like?
Okay. First of all, Michelle is very inspiring. I salute her. I salute her. Coco also, I salute both of you. Very good for you to come forward and share. And what I picked up from Michelle is her belief system is very strong. She believes that clarity of the mind is more important than look. Clarity of the mind is more important than physical weight. So she doesn't mind because she has got a clear belief. My mind must be clear. I want to concentrate. I want to function. Doesn't matter whether I'm fat or blood sugar is high or not. I think that's a very positive approach. With regards to my patient, you saw in the presentation, Mary. Mary believed that her relatives are not her relatives. Her family members are not her family members. So it took a long way, it took a long process for us to engage her in treatment. So gradually, slowly, she accepted she needed help and she opened up and she agreed to take medicine. And that was a point of recovery. And she's very well now, helping the husband in his shop. So appreciating that she's got an illness, accepting it, and adapting to it, which Coco and Michelle are actually very good at practicing the 3A, appreciating, accepting, and adapting. Okay, but there are so many questions in the chat. So maybe I answer one or two simple questions first.
Yes.
First question is psychosis schizophrenia same as schizophrenia? Psychosis is an umbrella term. When we say psychosis, we are referring to loss of touch with reality. Schizophrenia is only a form of psychosis. So the main psychotic illness you can say is schizophrenia. But there are many other kinds of psychosis. Drug-induced psychosis. You saw the person with LSD psychosis. And then you can have cannabis-induced psychosis. And even for bipolar, when you're manic, you can develop manic or mania with psychotic features. And you heard Michelle, Michelle, when she was very depressed, she could also have psychotic features, hearing voices. So you can have depression with psychotic features, commonly known as psychotic depression. So to answer the question, psychosis is not the same as schizophrenia. Psychosis is an umbrella term. Schizophrenia is one type of psychosis. The next question is ADHD. Is ADHD a mental illness? ADHD is a neurodevelopmental problem. It is not a mental illness. Bill Gates developed or had ADHD. He was brought to see a psychiatrist when he was 11 years old for 1.5 years. Right? He learned 3 things from the psychiatrist. Think about things. Think a little differently. Focus appropriately. I don't think he's on medicine now, and he's one of the top richest men in the world. So ADHD is not a mental illness. Asperger or ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, is also not. It's a neurodevelopmental problem. And Elon Musk told the whole world. Elon Musk said, I have Asperger. That day he entered into this Twitter HQ with a sink. He carried a sink into into Twitter's HQ, and he told the whole world, I want my ideas to sink in. So people were wondering why you carry a sink to Twitter HQ, because he wanted to address a point. Elon Musk with Asperger telling the whole world, what's a big deal? No big deal. So these are neurodevelopmental problem and therefore not mental illness. Okay, over back to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Dr. Ang. I would like to ask Coco, from the perspective of a caregiver, what kind of advice would you have for our group today? Because you know, Dr. Ang talked about how it's so important to have self-care and also be mindful of our own wellness in order to care for someone else. How do you cope, Coco?
Okay, because taking care of my husband, I do a routine with him because he also have what Dr. Ang say about OCD. So my house is very clean because my husband is like keeping everything in showroom condition. He loves that. And then I just let him do everything he like. I say, wow, I don't need to do housework already, you know. And then for him, he's like, yeah, I get to do all the housework. So I let him do. For us normal people, we maybe will hang a clothes. 15 minutes, we hang everything. But my husband must go color coding, the equal spacing. I was like, wow. But it's like I admire him. To me, that is a strength. That is not a strength I have. So I always see him as, I always tell people, focus on what, don't see them as patients, see them as, you know, their strength. And then as for us, when we are dealing with the day-to-day things, we have to put aside a time for ourselves, our me time. So usually I will spend time with my husband in the morning. He'll wake up about 2 or 3 a.m. After that, we will have a talk, like our therapy session. Today, can you tell me what you want to plan for today? We have one about 2 hours, and then we'll slowly talk through the days. He will list out. Don't give him too many tasks, maybe 3 tasks a day, maximum 1 to 3 tasks. And then he has the whole day to do when he feel like it, when he feel more healthier to do it. And then for my husband's case, he doesn't like people to look at him. So I will just, give him freedom, own time, own target. I will tell him, go and do what you want to do. And then at the end of the day, you just tell me whether you have done it or not, you know. And then for myself, is that I will make sure he take his medication throughout the days. He has morning, afternoon, and medication. After his dinner at 5 o'clock, he will take a medication and go to sleep. That's when it's me time. I will have my time to do my paperwork and then enjoy myself in my room. We have an entertainment room because we both love music. So we are in the daytime, you'll be here singing karaoke, and for me at night, I'll be playing on music, doing exercise, dancing, so relax, and then I will write down. For me, I have a habit of doing reflective journaling. So every day I'll go through, okay, what are the things that maybe that need improvement? What are the things that we have done? So this is something that is what we in young time we call it keeping a diary.
Yes.
But now we call reflective journaling.
That's
so
very
it's like,
good. Yeah, thank you, Coco. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. That's a very good point. Journaling is something that I've definitely been told that is very, very useful in helping us regulate our emotions and also from the perspective of a caregiver, I hope that a lot of you will consider doing that as well. Dr. Ang, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is about medication. We're getting quite a lot of questions in the chat from our viewers. Is some of the concerns around long-term use of medication. Would it be valid to be concerned about how one is affected by long-term use of medication, such as memory loss or cognitive function? What would you say to those type of concerns that we have as caregivers?
There are some well-known side effects, like weight gain. Michelle talked about weight gain, especially olanzapine. Olanzapine can lead to weight gain. There are easily 10 common antipsychotics we can use for schizophrenia. So explore them carefully with a psychiatrist, with a doctor. Some may have metabolic syndrome as a result of taking long-term antipsychotic. And you really need to find out what is the best medication for you. We know, just say clozapine causes the white blood cell to drop to below 4,000. So we have to be very careful. Too much of clozapine, patient will have problem. So we need the correct dose of medication. The good news is that the newer antipsychotics have fewer and fewer side effects. So people are now relying on the newer antipsychotic. I told you Professor Ellen said, call herself a lifer. She's going to take clozapine, 600 milligram for the rest of her life. Because like Michelle, she's able to function. Again, her belief is that better that I can function than, it's okay to be on long-term medicine as long as I can function. So really it is individual. You discuss with your doctor and find out what is the optimal medicine you should take. But I find out that it's not actually the medicine, it's also the second M. A lot of my patients are not motivated to do things. They are taking their medicine, but they're lying in bed all the time. They're looking at their iPad, and then their parents are very annoyed, Why are you always lying on the bed? Why are you not doing anything? Go for a walk, go for a swim, help out in the house, in the kitchen. But they are so avolitional, not motivated at all. I think that is a bigger challenge, how to get them out of their shell, and inspire them to do work.
Actually, can I add that? Sorry, in my limited experience, I'm not a psychiatrist, but in my experience, I feel that there is a difference, and a part you have to accept that maybe, right, because schizophrenia is a progressive illness. So I feel that you have to differentiate that sometimes it's not the medication that makes the side effects, but then it's the progression of the illness. For example, memory loss and stuff like that. So sometimes it's like the brain itself is just like that, and I feel that like what Dr. Ang said, I suffer actually from more negative effects than positive effects. For example, motivation problems and also prioritizing. But then like I feel that I tell myself, because I'm also a very stubborn person like Coco, I don't give up. So I feel that when I give myself time to lie in bed and rest until the point where I feel that I must do something, then I force myself to take a walk in the sun. So it feels better. And I actually met a counselor that told me, if you don't feel like getting out of bed, right, you tell yourself to do one thing at a time. Just get out of the bed and brush your teeth. And tell yourself that after you brush your teeth, you can go back to bed. But then you find that after you brush your teeth, you feel awake, right? Then you will like want to continue the second part, get dressed, and then step out of the house. So I feel that actually, unfortunately, due to present technology, we can't really differentiate between like the side effects of the medication or the progression of the illness, and also like mental health is a invisible illness, so we can't really do like you can't really take a blood test from your brain to diagnose anything. But I feel that actually the side effects are manageable, and actually you can do things to manage it, like go for 6 monthly blood tests and stuff like that for white blood cells and blood sugar. And I feel that actually the medication is a tool to help you. So actually from my experience, I feel that because mental health conditions is an invisible illness, so you can't blame your psychiatrist when they prescribe you with the best medicine in their opinion, but it's not suitable for you because they don't know you. So you have to feedback and work with your doctor in order to be partners together to come to a conclusion together, a medication plan together. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Dr. Ang, and thank you so much, Coco. This has been such an informative session. And Coco and Michelle especially, you've been so candid with us and open with your sharing. You've inspired all of us. I know I'm not the only one who's feeling really, really grateful. And, as Dr. Ang says, the two of you are just so inspiring. And I completely agree with Dr. Ang. For those of you who may have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch with the team here at CAL, and we will do our best to try to facilitate the questions to the relevant panelists who have been with us here tonight. Before we go, I really just want to take the time to thank Dr. Ang for patiently addressing all of our queries and being so informative and insightful. It's been such a valuable experience tonight. Thank you to Coco and Michelle. And of course, we want to also thank Janssen Pharmaceutical Companies of Johnson & Johnson for their support to this fireside chat of ours. Today's chat is part of CAL's Uncovering and Empowering Hidden Heroes campaign. We want to all caregivers to be able to be equipped to be able to seek resources and support that is available that you need. Just like all of you who have been dropping your messages and comments in the chat, talking about how you face certain concerns and not know how to navigate your loved one's condition, and you know, any questions that you may have, tap into us as your resource, get in touch with us, and we will do our best to help facilitate those queries for you. And once again, please remember that we are not alone, you are not alone. And the community here tonight, I mean, there's over 200 of us attending this chat tonight, and that is just amazing. I am so honored to be here. And thank you everyone once again for joining us. Have a good night, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next Fireside Chat.